Let's start with a word of prayer. Dear God, we give you thanks for this beautiful day that you gave us, for this computer medium. God, thank you that people are recovering from sicknesses, and we know there's a lot going around. We ask for your healing on those that are ill. God, we ask that those who are having trouble getting in and out of the computer will be able to get in when they need to. And now, God, we ask your blessing on this meeting, on this time that we're together in this study. Help us to hear your words. Help us to filter out all the voices that are going on and hear yours alone. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Okay. The Nephilim. Carol did her homework. She sent me a long thing, but I'm not going to get into hers unless we need it. But she did. So
How
did
many
anybody
pages
else look
is
up what
hers?
Nephilim? Oh, look at this. I'll put the papers. I'm
something.
impressed.
Oh, look at you.
There
You
we
wrote,
go.
oh, she hand wrote it. You typed yours.
I just memorized what I saw, so.
Okay.
I have a short version and a really long version.
Okay. Give us a short version.
The Nephilim are mysterious beings or people in the Hebrew Bible who are large and strong. The word Nephilim is loosely translated as giants in some translations of the Hebrew Bible, but left untranslated in others. Jewish explanations interpret them as hybrid sons of fallen angels.
Okay.
You must have got that from Wikipedia.
I
because
did.
Where I saw it too. I was surprised how many sources there were you could go to about it. I thought there'd be like one or two, and I started reading them. There was
And then there's 4 different theories apparently, which is
Yeah,
what they
yes.
printed.
we saw-
Right, because I was just going to say, and Mary and I have the same learning application Bible, and they contradict about the fallen angels, because it said some people thought that the sons of God were fallen angels, but the sons of God were probably not angels, because angels do not marry or reproduce. Some scholars believe this phrase refers to the descendants of Seth, who intermarried with Cain's evil descendants. This would weaken the good influence of the faithful and increase moral depravity in the world, resulting in an explosion of evil. So it's interesting that they said 2 different things.
Anybody else have anything else to add to that?
The Hebrew word nafal means to fall. So that's why they feel it's the fallen ones, or one reason it's translated that way.
Okay.
And the word is actually found only 2 times in the Bible, in Genesis and in Numbers.
Numbers, yep.
These
Okay.
aren't the creatures that helped build the Noah's Ark, are they? Those are different.
They have nothing to do. This Nephilim and Genesis have nothing to do with Noah's Ark,
Okay.
except. So I was hoping to bring you a new theory, but Kathy stumbled upon it. The idea that the sons of God were one of the 2 were the descendants of Seth, and the other one was a descendant of Cain. And they said that maybe that they just made more of a warrior race, and maybe they were bigger. They just, natural selection, some places, some nationalities are tall and some are short. I mean, it's you look at the Danish, the Netherlands are very tall people. And then what about the Italians? Not so tall. And so maybe it was. To me, that sounds like the most realistic, but it's all part of this mythology, which doesn't mean it's not true. It's just, you have to remember, this is truly ancient history of stories that have been passed on for generations and generations and generations. So I did a little more research on, who wrote where Genesis originated from. And I found the one source that I think I like the best. A lot of people say the tradition is that Moses wrote the Pentateuch. the first 5 books of the Bible, which doesn't make a lot of sense. But all of these stories come from different time periods. And it looks like they might have been compiled during the Babylonian captivity, the 6th to 5th centuries BC. So that's when they started compiling some of these stories together. And there really is unknown where it came from or where it was first written. There are a lot older sources in other cultures, like the Sumerians and Mesopotamia. There are written sources that predate the Bible by a lot. But that can give you at least where we can get a starting point for where Genesis was written. All right, so we've got some things on the Nephilim, some ideas about what happened. But whatever happened, it seems that there was a lot of evil on the earth. So we're going to start now with chapter 6. But before we get into it much, see, we're in Genesis. Why is my Bible upside down? Okay. Because this is going to be kind of a weird thing, and you're going to understand it as we go on. All right. So the story of Noah starts in chapter 6, verse 5. And let's see if we can get something. I want you to just look at yourself. Don't read it out. In the first verses 5 through 7, and see what God is called. Actually, 5 through 8.
Okay.
What's the name of God?
Lord,
The Lord.
You told us not to say it out.
And then look at verse 11, 12, 13.
God.
Okay, why did I point that out?
2 different writers.
2 different writers. We have the J and the P thread all intermingled into this. And so that's why as the story we read, we're going to find out that it doesn't make sense. Sometimes there's different dates, different times. So let me so the J section, let me find where we're at here. The J section is, we have 6. We start with 9 through 10, 11 through 12. But you see that these little J things come in and out. So we're just going to read this, but pay attention to every time the name of God switch from the Lord to God. And you'll see that the different threads are in there. So we can start talking about like how many days it rained and how long was the flood. And then we'll begin to see that why there's contradictions. So let's read chapter 6, starting with verse 5, and go through the rest of the chapter. I think, how long is 6?
22 is the end.
Can't turn my page. Sorry, I've been there. Yep. So let's read chapter 6, starting with verse 5, all the way to the end of the chapter.
I can start.
Okay.
The Lord saw how great man's wickedness on earth had become, and that every inclination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil all the time. The Lord was grieved that he had made man on earth, and his heart was filled with pain. So the Lord said, I will wipe mankind, whom I have created, from the face of the earth, men and animals, and creatures that move along the ground, and birds of the air, for I am grieved that I have made them. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord.
I'm not going to read because I'll start coughing.
This is the account of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time, and he walked with God. Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight and was full of violence. God saw how corrupt the earth had become, for all the people on earth had corrupted their ways. So God said to Noah, I'm going to put an end to all people, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. I am surely going to destroy both them and the earth. So make yourself an ark of cypress wood. Make rooms in it and coat it with pitch inside and out. And this is how you are to build it. The ark is to be 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 45 feet high. Make a roof for it and finish the ark to within 18 inches of the top. Put a door in the side of the ark and make lower, middle, and upper decks. I'm going to bring floodwaters on the earth to destroy all life under the heavens, every creature that has breath of life in it. Everything on earth will perish. But I will establish my covenant with you, and you will enter the ark, you and your sons and your wife and your sons' wives with you. You are to bring into the ark 2 of all living creatures, male and female, to keep them alive with you. 2 of every kind of bird, of every kind of animal, of every kind of creature that moves along on the ground will come to you to be kept alive. You are to take every kind of food that is to be eaten and store it as food for you and for them. Noah did everything just as God commanded him.
Okay, we've got the beginnings. We've got this evil earth, and there's going to be this flood. Do you think it's possible there was really a flood? Or is this a myth, a story of like a fable to make sure you know what's right and wrong?
Well, this is Sue talking, and I think when we look at the history of floods in our country, in our world, I think it's very possible.
But was it a worldwide flood?
Does it say it was?
I think it was a flood in what they knew was their world, but it could have been very limited just to that part of the world, because they at that time didn't know much beyond, their neighborhood.
Okay, here's something interesting. Almost every people have a story of an ancient flood. Almost every place you look in the world, if they go back to the great history, there's a story of a flood. Major flood. So let's go back out of our brain. And has any of you been to southern Spain? Anybody know what is between Spain and Africa?
Water.
Mediterranean Sea.
There's a famous rock.
Oh,
Rock of
Rock
Gibraltar.
of Gibraltar.
Rock of Gibraltar. Okay, so you got that picture in your mind, because my computer won't let me pull up pictures. I was trying to get a picture, but if it does, I can't talk. So I want you to think about a map of the Mediterranean Sea, and you got Spain and Italy and Greece and Israel, and then you got the Africa coast, and it comes up and there's that little space. At one point in the world history, there was a land bridge there. There was no Mediterranean Sea. Okay, you got that picture in your mind?
Mhm.
So imagine what happened with glacial melt as the ice age began to melt and all of the sea level rose and the water poured through what is now the Straits of Gibraltar. Can you imagine the massive flooding that went on at that point? Okay. Oh, look at that.
Am I at the right there?
There
Yep.
we are. There's the Strait of Gibraltar, that little place that flooded that whole Mediterranean region and the Black Sea and created all that seas in there. Okay, so you got the idea. So I'm not alone in thinking, and there's other scholars that thinking this was a major flood for the whole part that would have been in that Middle East section where we think a lot of humanity began. So they had civilizations there. There's no wonder that there's a flood story in every part. Now think about, where did the Native Americans come from? Does anybody know the world history, where they originally came from?
Siberia.
Russia.
Russia, right. They walked across the land bridge between Russia and Alaska. So if their origins are from the beginning of time when this major flood happened, they would take that legend with them because that's part of their heritage too. So if this flood myth, this story, is around in every culture, is it unique to the Hebrew culture? No. So here's a news flash. I was telling you about this last week. Gotta find my book. Oh, so I can. There was a story of Gilgamesh. Has any of you ever heard of this? This was a story, and I'm trying to look it up so I can tell you exactly how to spell it.
Yeah, please.
From Sumeria. I get there. You're telling me about Gilgamesh. Okay. Gilgamesh. And this very much predates any written Hebrew, even the Hebrew culture, and they have found written evidence. And the story is almost identical to the story of Moses. So for parts of it where it rains for 7 days, the part that he collected the animals to save them, the part that he sent out various birds to go and fly and see if things were ready for them to get off of this boat. And it's just a story, and that was a very popular story. So it seems that it's very plausible that this may have been worked into the oral traditions of the Hebrew people.
I wonder if you can use the same numbers.
Oh, Dottie's talking to Catherine, I think.
Yeah, can she use the same numbers you gave me to get
Yes,
in
she can.
her
Yes.
phone?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, so there's that story. So this flood is most likely, since it's in every culture, this major flood is something that happened.
Where'd they put them?
Did it happen? Not so much here. So we've got even these very specific things that are written. Well, it's part of the ancient history, the oral history. So you're sitting around at the campfire and someone says, oh, I heard this great story. And they start sharing that. And then a few generations later, it becomes their own story. So, all right. So I want you to look back at what we just read in chapter 6.
Start here.
And what is God's name in chapter 6, verse 11 on that whole dialogue part about how to build this ark? Is it the Lord or God?
God.
Okay. Now we're going to start in
No,
chapter
that
7,
it covered up.
and let's read through and see how far we can get until God's name is changed again. So let's start on chapter 7. We're going to read the next one, which is not necessarily the same storyline, the same writer. Let me pull this up because this gets confusing.
I can start that.
Okay, we want chapter 7, and let me see how far we're going to go. So let's go 7. Just one little place in there. Okay, start reading chapter 7 until we get to verse 12.
Okay. When everything was ready, the Lord said to Noah, go into the boat with all your family, for among all the people of the earth, I can see that you are alone are righteous. The way I read that didn't make sense. Let me try that again. Go into the boat with all of your family, for among all the people of the earth, I can see that you alone are righteous. Take with you 7 pairs, male and female, of each animal I have approved for eating and for sacrifice, and take 1 pair of each of the others. Also take 7 pairs of every kind of bird. There must be a male and a female in each pair to ensure that all life will survive on the earth after the flood. 7 days from now, I will make the rains pour down on the earth, and it will rain for 40 days and 40 nights until I have wiped from the earth all the living things I have created. So Noah did everything as the Lord commanded him. Noah was 600 years old when the flood covered the earth. He went on board the boat to escape the flood, he and his wife and his sons and their wives. With them were all the various kinds of animals, those approved for eating and for sacrifice, and those that were not, along with all the birds and the small animals that scurry along the ground. They entered the boat in pairs, male and female, just as God had commanded Noah. After 7 days, the waters of the flood came and covered the earth. Do you want me to keep going?
No, stop there. So how many animals of each kind?
Seven pairs of each kind.
Not 7
Yes.
pairs of each kind.
7 pairs, male and female, of each animal I have approved for eating and for sacrifice.
Okay, for the clean animals are 7 pairs. And 7 pairs of the birds.
Think of every
Also-
kind of unclean animal.
But look at chapter 6, verse 19.
Chapter 6.
Male and female of every kind of bird, in order to keep them alive.
It doesn't say anything about the 7 pairs, so you can see we've got a different voice, of different writer here. Because in chapter 6, it's one writer, chapter 7, it's the other.
Mhm.
All right, so let's see how long. So it's going to rain for 40 days and 40 nights. Let's read now 11.
Yeah.
11 through 16, let's see, through 17, 18, 21. I guess we can read down to the rest of the chapter now. So 11 through the rest of the chapter. Someone can read and stop when you're tired.
I'll read. When Noah was 600 years old, on the 17th day of the 2nd month, all the outlets of the vast body of water beneath the earth burst open. All the floodgates of the sky were open, and rain fell on the earth for 40 days and nights. On that same day, Noah and his wife went into the boat with their 3 sons, Shem, Ham, Japheth, and their wives. With them went every kind of animal, domestic, wild, large, and small, and every kind of bird. A male and a female of each kind of living being went into the boat with Noah, as God had commanded. Then the Lord shut the door behind Noah.
Okay,
The flood-
right
Okay?
there. I just want you to stop. We've got God commanded and then the Lord shut him in.
Mhm.
So these are all mixing up in here because they're different voices. And also, once again, we have the two of each kind. We don't have anything about the 7 days. And earlier on, it said, in 7 days, I will send rain. Well, anyways, so you just see the stories are mixed in there, but let's go 17 and continue on. Or no, wherever we were. Yes, 17 to the end of the chapter.
You want me to continue?
Yes, please.
The flood continued for 40 days, and the water became deep enough for the boat to float. The water became deeper and the boat drifted on the surface. It became so deep that it covered the highest mountains. It went on rising until it was 25 feet deep above the tops of the mountains. Every living being on earth died, every bird, every animal, every person. Everything on earth that breathed died. The Lord destroyed all living beings on the earth, human beings, animals, and birds. The only ones left were Noah and those who were with him in the boat. The water did not start going down for 150 days.
Okay. So we've got the story. We can see things are intermingled in there, a little bit of confusion about how many of each kind. We don't quite know, 2 different stories. The water fell for 40 days and the water swelled up on earth for 150 days. They kept rising. So let's see if that maintains as we go on. So let's go through
Molly,
8,
can I
to
ask
read
you
a
a
while in 8.
Can I ask a question? First?
Yeah.
What was the difference between the clean animals and the unclean animals? Could they
Okay, does anybody know?
eat the clean animals?
The hooves or whatever.
What are the difference between the clean and the unclean animals? Which at this point, I didn't even think about it. They didn't get the law until Moses to know what clean and unclean animals were.
Hmm.
So that's part of an interesting place about how this could be in there. But what would be the Jewish understanding of clean and unclean animals?
Isn't that right? The hooves?
Was
Was
it,
Something-
Yeah.
was it the ones they could eat as food and ones that they wouldn't eat as food?
There was ones you could use as food, but they're also the sacrifice. There's if they have cloven hoof and chew their food. There's a whole list of it in the law from Moses. If they crawl, if they have scales, if they're fish and they have scales, they're good to eat. If they don't have scales, they're not good. If they crawl, they're not good. If they can fly, they're good. If they just list after list after list of what is clean and what is unclean animal. Like reptiles are not clean. You can't eat those. Pigs have cloven hooves, but they don't chew their cud, so they're unclean.
Hmm.
But see, this tells us that this story comes through the people that have heard the tradition, and then they put it into their own mindset, which obviously happened a long time after the flood because the law didn't come in until Moses. Right?
Yeah. Hmm.
Hmm.
And Pastor Molly, can I ask a question also, please? You said that this is the J and P storytellers throughout now,
Mhm.
correct?
Right.
Yeah, Yahweh and the priestly, I think you
Yes.
said. But how do you know that? How-
Because I read it from somebody who's smarter than me. Because, or maybe it's because this one says the J and the P. I would think it would be the E. But that is why. It's because this scholar says it. So his name
Good
is
old
John
Barkley,
Gibson.
okay.
I trust that because we know we have the 4 sources, the J and the P and the E and the D. And the D is for Deuteronomy. But the J and the P and the E are what we get before that.
Hmm.
So this one says J and P.
Okay.
Let's see. It is clear that the references to the 7 pairs and 1 pair and to a sacrifice both come from the J source, and that the references of 2 of every sort comes from the P source. It did not have a sacrifice scene and therefore did not require extra animals beyond the breeding pair and needed to preserve each species. So I don't know why. I'd
Okay.
have to learn
It's
more.
interesting how they figured that out.
But it's easy to see that it comes from 2 sources just by the language.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
But then when I'm seeing like there's 5 different sources or whatever, it's interesting that they could figure out what source it came from.
It takes a lot of work, a lot of years
Yeah.
of scholarly work to do that.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right, so we stopped at 150 days. And where are we then?
That was the end of chapter 7.
Chapter 7. All right, good. All right, so let's go with chapter 8.
Wow, we're moving right along.
We're moving right along. Yeah, this is a one big story here.
you want me to read?
Please.
But God remembered Noah and all the beasts and all the cattle that were with him in the ark. And God caused a wind to pass over the earth, and the water subsided. Also, the fountains of the deep and the floodgates of the sky were closed, and the rain from the sky was restrained, and the water receded steadily from the earth, and at the end of 150 days, water decreased. And in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, the ark rested upon the mountain of Ararat. And the water decreased steadily until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the first day of the month, the tops of the mountains became visible. Then it came about at the end of 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made. And he sent out a raven, and it flew here and there until the water was dried up from the earth. Then he sent out a dove from him to see if the water was abated from the face of the land. But the dove found no resting place for the sole of her foot. So she returned to him into the ark, for the water was on the surface of all the earth. Then he put out his hand and took her and brought her into the ark to himself. So he waited another 7 days. And again he sent out the dove from the ark. And the dove came to him toward evening, and behold, in her beak was a freshly picked olive leaf. So Noah knew that the water was abated from the earth. Then he waited yet another 7 days and sent out the dove, but she did not return to him again. Keep going.
No, we'll stop there. So we're just seeing the waters going back down. Now, did you notice, how did the water come?
We assume rain, don't we?
It rained and
Well, it sounded like there was a flood and then it rained.
Well, he sent a wind.
but it said that it opened the fountains of the earth. So water was coming up and raining down. So doesn't that, when we talk about that, the erosion of the Gibraltar Straits, the waters are pouring in, so they're seeing all this water come, and it just started raining. So it makes a lot of sense that this is the kind of flood that maybe was the flood of this story.
It could be like the storm surge with the hurricanes.
Could be,
Mm,
could be.
And
But
then-
if it was a storm surge of that erosion of the Gibraltar Strait and the making of the Mediterranean Ocean, that would be an interesting, watching that water just pouring in from someplace you don't know where. So interesting.
Hmm.
All right, so we sent out the raven, we sent out the dove. Gilgamesh did the same thing in the legend of Gilgamesh from the Sumerians. Hey, let's go. We're starting at verse 13, unless we're going to go right to the end of chapter 8.
Noah was now 601 years old. On the first day of the new year, 10.5 months after the flood began, the flood waters had almost dried up from the earth. Noah lifted back the covering of the boat and saw that the surface of the ground was drying. 2 more months went by, and at last the earth was dry. Then God said to Noah, "Leave the boat, all of you, you and your wife and your sons and their wives. Release all the animals, the birds, the livestock, and the small animals that scurry along the ground, so that they can be fruitful and multiply throughout the earth." So Noah, his wife, and his sons and their wives left the boat, and all of the large and small animals and birds came out of the boat, pair by pair. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord And there he sacrificed as burnt offerings the animals and birds that had been approved for that purpose. And the Lord was pleased with the aroma of the sacrifice and said to himself, I will never again curse the ground because of the human race, even though everything they think or imagine is bent toward evil from childhood. I will never again destroy all living things. As long as the earth remains, there will be planting and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night.
Okay, we got through the flood. Phew. Now, where did the ark come to rest?
Ararat.
Ararat.
Mountain of Ararat.
Is there a Mount Ararat now?
Yep.
Where is
Didn't
it?
they find what? Did they
In
find what
Turkey.
they think?
Isn't it in Turkey?
It is in Turkey.
Ooh, Tom, way to go. I didn't know that.
Okay, Dottie's asking a question.
Didn't they think they found the remains of the ark?
Yes, satellite imaging.
They have many times, different places. They think they
Oh,
seen something. And so far, it has never come to proof. It has never stood up to the scrutiny.
ah,
So,
uh-huh. Don't
and-
believe everything you read.
yeah, you can't, you don't know.
Except the Bible.
So I want you to think about how
Right.
long ago this flood took place.
I don't think anybody has any idea.
Well, we
They
know
weren't
it's got to
keeping-
be more than 4,000 years ago. How would we expect anything to last that long?
Right.
I mean, 4,000 years is a long time. And we discover artifacts from around Jesus' time from 2,000 years ago. And they're few and far between. Now we have to go back just as far as it would be to when Jesus walked on the earth again to think we could find a wooden vessel. Not
Yep.
much chance. Not much chance. And particularly if it's this legend, this myth that does tell the story, but it may have not even originated with the Hebrews, and it may be even older than that. Does that rock your faith to think about that?
Well, we have talked before that the time periods were not recorded the same way throughout all these ages, so that we don't really know.
That's right. That's
Now
right.
now it's reappeared in Kentucky.
That's right. Any of you ever heard of the Ark Adventure?
I have a few friends just recently that have been there, that and relatives that have gone to see it.
Tell me about it.
They a lot of pictures of them standing by it, and they say it's amazing, but they don't give me any details specifically, but I've seen a lot of pictures.
I personally think it's probably a fun thing to go to see. I'd just be amazed at how they build it and all the engineering and stuff. But I think to me it would be a little bit hoaxy. What's the place down near Lancaster that has the shows?
Sight and sound.
Sight and sound.
We went to a show there and it was Noah's Ark. And it was really neat with the kids because there was the setting, the was neat and all the animals and whatever. But to me, that seemed hoaxy too, because a lot of the animals I don't think were in the area where Noah was to begin with. I don't think he went to the North Pole and got a polar bear or whatever. I think it's fine. People interpret what they think it's like. To me, it takes away from the story more than it adds when I see something it's like, to tell you the truth, when I see the movie, The 10 Commandments, that sort of got me, a lot of that seems hoaxy to me because they've tried to make it dramatic and a movie, but I don't know, for some reason, those things don't excite me too much.
A week or two ago, I watched Russell Crowe movie that's Noah. He's Noah. And the ark that he built as Noah is a rectangular solid. It doesn't have curves. It's a box.
Like a raft or something.
And no,
Oh.
it got sides. It also had watchers that came and helped him build it that were sort of weird. That were weird. It was like they were made out of stone, and they came and they helped him build. And that's why I wondered if the giants were but yeah, when I saw the ark that was in the movie, and I thought about the ark that's in Kentucky, that's nice and smooth and very pretty. And the ark in the movie it had pitch on the outside, tar, and it looked like somebody had built it without trying to make it beautiful, but to make sure it would float. But yeah. Anyway.
So that movie I've been just reading that has been banned by a lot of Christian circles and the Muslims. The movie Noah, because takes the story out of the realm of biblical realism, I guess.
The Book of Enoch is where they got the watchers, the strange creatures that help him build the ark.
Okay, well, the Book of Enoch, it's frequently this author that I've been reading, at least, and when we were in Revelation too, the Book of Enoch, there's a lot of references to that. That's one of these apocryphal books that are not having the authority of Scripture, but still have some authority. So it's interesting. All right, so Mount Ararat's in Turkey, and people are going looking for the ark. And we have this huge ark, and I read that may be the largest wood construction of anything in the world. But then they haven't been to the Athenaeum Hotel in Chautauqua. which honestly, I read sometime was the largest wood frame structure in the world, the Athenaeum Hotel at Chautauqua. So that is a huge place, and it's wood frame.
Mhm.
All right, so the ark, Noah, the flood. So we're learning these different voices. We can see them through the oral traditions. We can see that some of the information is contradictory because we can see that there's more than one voice that's written down and recorded in this story. And the flood story is in every culture. So there we have the flood in the Genesis story. And what's the moral of the story? Because, you read these stories, there's something that we're supposed to take from it. What are we taking from this story?
Don't be bad. Obey God.
Well, he obeyed God by building the ark.
Did,
So he
yeah.
had to have total faith.
Okay, but what does it have to say about the nature of God?
That he is, the word I'm merciful, I guess, is the word, or something.
Merciful. He was going to wipe out everything, so there'd be nobody left. He said, no, he's a good guy. We'll save Noah. So maybe there was a flood when there was a huge flood in a particular area, and only a few people survived. What do you think what happens when the house next door to you is wiped out by a tornado and your house gets nothing?
That happened to some friends of mine in Minnesota. There was a tornado, and they were in the basement, and they heard it, and a tree limb, a big limb, came through their picture window. They came upstairs, and it was like a big swirl had gone around their house, and the houses on either side and front and back of them were flattened. And the only damage theirs was that branch coming in the window. That was strange.
So what do you
So
think?
they went out and helped other people.
So what do you think when something like that happens?
you wonder why it was, why you were saved and somebody else wasn't.
Don't we say,
Yeah, that family really was in prayer a lot, asking God why, if they were supposed to be doing something special.
People sometimes feel guilty that they were saved, or in war, somebody standing next to you gets shot and killed and you weren't. You feel guilty.
Yeah,
Survivor's guilt.
survivor's guilt? Yeah.
Mhm.
But here's a way of looking at God. God picked him out. God chose him to save him. I mean, when you hear about that, the tornado that goes around a house and saves you and your family, you got to think you're there for a reason.
yeah. You sure want to find it, because that's pretty explicit.
Yeah. So this story, so Moses, for some reason, Noah was saved, Noah and his family, and were there no other good people, but maybe afterwards this one family thought, wow, maybe we were chosen for a special reason. Maybe we were good.
Well, Noah, they said in the book, in the Bible, that he was good.
He was a righteous man, blameless, and among the people of his time,
Right.
walked with God.
So he did. I would think his sons would learn from the fact that, because they weren't the ones that were. It was Noah.
Mhm.
They should have learned about that Noah was a good guy. They
Mhm.
should be more like him.
Yeah. Is it okay to say that the Hebrews adopted this story? And maybe it didn't really happen. Maybe there really wasn't somebody named Noah. Maybe it was Gilgamesh. Does it take away from the message in the Bible that says, God says, I'm never going to destroy the world again with a flood. I'm not going to do it. It's not, it's not going to help. Maybe, I don't know. But does it give us the nature, the relationship between humans and God? That God is merciful.
Yeah.
Mhm. Okay, that about does it for tonight. But I'd like you to look up, so the homework for this week is to find Gilgamesh and look it up, because I have the story written here. I didn't want to make it, didn't want you to read it. But look and see if you can find anything about Gilgamesh. And I'll spell it again. Gilgamesh. See
There's
what else you can
When
find.
I looked it up while we were reading, and there's a movie or something.
There was something on the History Channel or National Geographic or something that was a really good documentary on the flood that talked about Gilgamesh and put the stories together. And it's a very interesting documentary.
I wonder if those are available for us to see.
I don't know. I haven't looked it up, but it's it might have been a PBS. I watched that. It's either a History Channel or a PBS, but see if you can look up anything about Gilgamesh and the flood. See what it says, because Gilgamesh was a great king. He wasn't saved because he was so good. He was saved to teach him a lesson so that he could carry on after that. The story goes.
The
So
thing is,
Gilgamesh.
the Gilgamesh that's in here says that the Fate universe in this is an anime that has that name.
Well, we're not looking up the anime. We're looking for the historical
I'm just bored.
Sumerian. Sumar, Sumeria. It's not, it's SUM. I know it's that. I'm trying
Not,
to see where it is. It's not Samaria, SAM. It's SUMARI something, A maybe. But I know it starts with SUM. There, SUMERIAN. That's it, Sumerian.
Erian, okay.
Mhm.
Okay,
And there's some archaeological evidence of some substantial floods in that area where they have layers of silt. They can prove that there's been substantial floods. But there was a flood. Was Noah saved? Was there an ark? I don't know. I don't know, but I know it tells about God's mercy. It's the whole thing is when we went through Revelation. The big important part was not to try to figure out all the details, but to know that God is in charge and God is going to win. And whatever you're going through, God's there and it's going to be okay eventually. And now here we are and we see this destruction of the whole world, but God is there saying, okay, I'll spare you. And I'm not going to do this again, and I'm going to be there. So we just see that hand of God's mercy and God's control all the time. Enough so that God warned them before the flood came.
Is that someplace that the rainbow is God's promise about that?
We'll get that. We'll get that next week.
So now,
Okay.
has anybody ever heard of any other boat being called an ark? Did they call other boats arks?
Actually, they used the same word for the basket that Moses was put into the Nile River.
Interesting.
It's
Whoa.
Same word.
Yeah, that's a different, yeah.
Put him in the ark,
Hmm.
basket. It was the saving him.
wow, I had no idea. That's neat.
Isn't that cool?
It is.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? We'll start.
You know,
Yes.
as I was listening to last week's couple of things that really stood out to me, and Dottie, you kind of mentioned it tonight, though. I'm glad you said something about the length of years and explaining that instead of the numerical value, said it's probably more about the significance of the number than the exact number. I know that's one way of looking at it, and that kind of made sense to me. But I also liked how you were about the genealogy, because truthfully in the Bible, I'm like, oh my gosh, really? Let's just get on with this. But they go on and on and on about the genealogy. But when you said it tells the story of us and our sin and the mercy of God, and that really struck home with me. And then I just happened to read in the Bible that Mary and I have that it says the genealogies point out that people are important to God. And I really love that because I thought, okay, Kathy, so don't be so impatient when you're going through all of these names, like, let's get on with it. But that's important to him because people are important to God.
Good.
So that was neat.
Just another thing as I was studying more, I want you to think about, we have, how long is a year? 365 days, because that's how long it takes the earth to go around the sun. Did ancient people know about that? Could they tell?
Nope.
No. How long is a lunar year?
Don't know.
30 days.
30 days.
20
Actually, 29 days, 14 hours and 44 minutes, something like that. So if you divide Methuselah's
Excuse me.
969 years and put that into months, how many years did he live?
Divided by 12. Then.
Divide 969 by 12.
80.
80 something.
Possibility.
Just dropping that there. Just dropping that.
I like that. That makes
Mhm.
the story a lot better.
When you have all these 800 and 900 years, they're all living in their upper 70s and around 80.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. Just a thought, just a thought. Okay, well, I'm gonna turn us off tonight and we'll see you next week.
Molly,
Yep,
let me just jump in. One of the explanations I've heard for people who have lived so long is there weren't the diseases and germs and bacteria around to create that they, that they were dying from them.
mm-hmm. But when I see people whose joints simply wear out, it's hard for me to believe that anybody could live 900 years. Because they just, your bodies wear out, but yep, that's definitely an explanation for it, but.
But
Okay.
80 years would be a pretty long time for that time frame too. You think about the way they had to work, and I mean, their work was not sitting behind a desk either. So it was more out in the elements and stuff.
Yeah. Okay,
And
keep looking.
Molly, before we say good evening, does everybody know about Bobby Underwood?
Hey, let me turn the recording off, Tom. Okay.